Assume we're live, so welcome back. We're glad you could join us again. I promise you, you won't be disappointed that you did. We're really excited to have Dr. William Wagner with us here today. Leading the conversation will be the ISS Lab's very own Gary Rodrigue, Director of Programs and Partnerships. Gary joined the team at the International Space Station U.S. National Lab as Director of Programs and Partnerships in 2019. Prior to that, prior to this current role, Gary was with IBM for 17 years, where, among other roles, he was the worldwide lead for IBM's blockchain offering. In his career, Gary has had the opportunity to be at the forefront of many major transformative technologies. Many of those events were driven by a convergence of technologies. And with each of these events, Gary's leadership skills, strategic vision, communication skills, and deeper customer relationships helped the companies he worked with become market share leaders. Gary has degrees from Providence College, USC, and attended the Harvard IBM Executive MBA program. Gary, thanks for joining us today.
Great. Thank you, Christine. I'm honored to be here today. I'm very excited and feel very privileged, and kind of a hard act to follow after all the wonderful discussion this morning and presentations. On behalf of CASIS, the Center for Advancement of Science in Space, I'd like to thank you for joining us today. We're going to be taking you through a program that I've been working on the last 2 years with the University of Pittsburgh, the McGowan Center for Regenerative Medicine. Today's program is entitled Biomanufacturing in Space, a Paradigm Shift in Regenerative Medicine. As Christine said, I'm the Director of Partnerships and Programs at CASIS, and have been working for the last 2 years with Dr. William Wagner, who is the director of the McGowan Center at the University of Pittsburgh, and his team. For those of you who are not familiar with the McGowan Institute, let me share a few important facts, and these facts are important from the aspect of this idea of translational medicine. That is, taking medicine from the laboratory and bringing it to the clinic and the patient. The McGowan Institute was launched in 2001 as a joint program between the University of Pittsburgh and the University of Pittsburgh Medical Center. Building on the success of its predecessor, the McGowan Center for Artificial Organs, the McGowan Institute focuses on 3 main areas of regenerative medicine. The first being tissue engineering / biomaterials, the second being cellular therapies, and the third being medical devices and artificial organs. Now, here's some of the important facts here. The Institute is comprised of 250 faculty members from 40 different academic disciplines. It employs over 2,000 researchers, and since its inception in 2001, it's filed 1,000 patents in the US, 1,650 internationally. They've been awarded 220 patents in the US and executed 205 licenses / options with private commercial companies. They've spun out 33 companies, generated over 700 new jobs, and over 800 million in private investment. This is an amazing track record for translational medicine. I'll repeat that. From the laboratory to the clinic to the patient. So clearly, working with this partner is the University of Pittsburgh. The idea is how can we bring what we learn up on the space station back down, and so that it really benefits mankind here on Earth and gets to the patient. By way of background, as the director of CASIS, I'm chartered to look at strategic opportunities and how we leverage this facility, the ISS, to enable science and technology that really answers the so what question, so that it comes back to benefit the taxpayers who paid for this investment. As Christine talked about before I joined the labs here, I had the opportunity to work at 2 companies, Rockwell International and the IBM Technology Group. And in both of these areas, at Rockwell, I led the group that put the first modems in personal computers and in laptops. And then when I joined IBM Technology Group, I led the group that was responsible for the Qualcomm relationship. And that collaboration between IBM and Qualcomm provided the devices that made the smartphone possible. Both of those events are important because they were disruptive technology platforms that changed every aspect of our lives, from the personal side, but also from the professional side. And here today, after being with the labs here and working with the University of Pittsburgh, I feel very, very strongly that we have the opportunity with the right people and the right collaboration partners that we can drive another major disruptive technology platform. So today I'll be talking with Dr. William Wagner, who's a visionary who sees the potential of this LEO environment to transform regenerative medicine. As I stated, Dr. Wagner is the director of the McGowan Institute for Regenerative Medicine. He's also a distinguished professor of surgery, chemical engineering, and bioengineering at the University of Pittsburgh. He serves as scientific director of the NSF Engineering Research Center on revolutionizing metallic biomaterials. And he is a chief science officer for the Armed Forces Institute of Regenerative Medicine, both of which are major programs at the McGowan Institute. Bill holds a BS from Johns Hopkins University and a PhD from the University of Texas in chemical engineering. And given that we have limited time, with his approval, I will not read the extensive list of awards, accolades, accomplishments, endorsement, but just jump into the conversation with Bill today. So Bill, thank you for joining us, and it's good to see you again.
Thank you, Gary. Pleasure to be here.
Great. So Bill, 2 years ago, this coming September, we met for the first time at your institute, the McGowan Center for Regenerative Medicine. You felt at that time, and still feel very strongly, that the US National Lab is this amazing asset because of its microgravity environment, and that this environment can be this transformative technology platform for producing biomaterials. You have said, and I quote, "Studies conducted on the ISS over the past several years have indicated that one area of potential significant economic value and benefit to life here on Earth is space-based biomanufacturing, or put another way, the use of biological and non-biological materials to produce commercially relevant biomolecules and biomaterials for use in preclinical, clinical, and therapeutic applications." Can you share with the audience why at that time, and you still feel that there's a sense of urgency, and why the timing is so perfect for this convergence of technologies, if you will, to create this transformative technology platform in the area of regenerative medicine?
Sure. So I think, with this audience in particular, I don't have to say much to convince, I think, anyone that we are truly blessed to be at a point in humankind where access to low Earth orbit, access to microgravity is available in a way that's orders of magnitude less than in the space shuttle days. And we have this new territory that's opened up to us. And the question is, what are we going to do? How are we going to leverage it? Analogies have been made, with land-based discoveries, and you find a new territory, and you realize that territory is uniquely suited towards growing, some crop, or it has gold deposits, or it has some other thing of value that make it worth your while to be there and to work in that area. So, the territory is opening up, and the land rush is on. Private corporations are joining in this. And then the question is, well, how are we going to leverage the unique aspects of that you cannot readily reproduce here on Earth? And then you use the term convergence. So not only are we at this inflection point of access to low Earth orbit, we're at an inflection point in biological sciences. I mean, we've had tremendous revolutionary and profound evolutionary changes in the biomedical sciences. You'll witness that you can stop your average person on the street and they will now know what mRNA is because they've heard about mRNA or have had an mRNA vaccine. That is just now becoming possible. Gene editing is happening and rapidly moving forward. The harnessing of stem cell potential is happening. It's really the engineering of biology now, as opposed to using traditional engineering and applying it in a biomedical setting. It is truly now bioengineering. So we have these two phenomena, these two trains at full speed moving ahead and coming together. And what are we going to do? And I always say, I can't tell you exactly. We're putting some bets on what we think is most likely, but I sure wouldn't want to take the bet against profound things being happening in low Earth orbit in 10 and 15 years. I'm fairly confident that with the breadth and depth of technologies that are out there, that microgravity is going to get leveraged.
Fascinating. So when you and I first met, it was very clear at that time, the way you articulated it to me is that we really need to bring in these world experts. And so the idea of creating this symposium came about. And can you share your rationale about this, bringing the symposium together and some of the questions that you wanted to have the symposium answer?
Yeah, I mean, the key thing is we wanted to get, and we didn't even get complete representation. It's just virtually impossible. We did get over 100 experts in various topic areas related to this from the bio and from the aerospace side. But we kind of took an approach that we take at the Institute, which is quite bluntly, how do we get it to the patient? If we don't get it to the patient, we always say we haven't succeeded in our mission. So we can't just run experiments. We can't just publish papers. We can't even just stop at a patent. We have to think about how is that going to get to the patient? How is it going to get to the customer? And that's when all these other things come into play. The business model. Who's going to buy this? Who's going to pay for it? How does it compete with the standard technology that's there right now? How are you going to displace that? What's the competitive advantage? What's the regulatory pathway? Manufacturing, all these considerations. So we wanted to look at the data that's been generated over the past several decades in microgravity on the space station and say, okay, what does this all mean? How is it connected? And looking at all of this, what are the key value propositions? Where is there a line of sight where we can say, there's still some unknowns here, but if these drop into place, there's a business model there. If we can figure a way to grow stem cells that have X and Y characteristics in microgravity and only microgravity, then we know that market exists. We can estimate what that market would be. We can estimate what the commercialization pathway might be, and there would be a business model. So without question, there's risk every which way you look, but we wanted to orient the experts and say, what do you think? You've been involved in these experiments. How do you think this gets to commercialization? How does it get to a patient? How does it have impact on the world population?
During the fall and winter of 2019, we met a few times at your center, and I remember each and every meeting like it was yesterday. And each time I became more and more excited about your vision of this symposium and the experts teams that you were assembling. And at that time, your team and our team got together and we thought about we're doing this 2-day symposium at the Kennedy Space Center. And then COVID hit, and then we had to pivot. about a year at this right now, and we had to pivot to make it a virtual meeting. And as part of that virtual meeting, instead of a 2-day meeting, it became a meeting that lasted once a week for 4 months, and pulled in, to your point, over 138 world experts in everything from the business side of this, the business case scenario, to the stem cells, to organoids, to biofabrication, to AI, robotics. And so why do you think, I mean, that was a huge time commitment for these world experts to come in and participate in this. Why do you think there was such a positive reaction and so much interest to participating in the symposium?
Well, I'll give you my tongue-in-cheek answer would be because they were stuck at home with COVID restrictions, and it was something interesting to do. But seriously, it's an incredible privilege, to be able to think these kind of thoughts. Again, I always look at the scope of humanity, and I say that you're sitting here and you have this privilege of trying to answer the question, what makes sense to do in microgravity? What other humans have been able to really dig at that question with data and begin to kind of scope out what makes sense to do? It's that similar explorer feeling where if you're on a ship heading to some uncharted land, and you've got to figure out when you get there, okay, now what? It's exhilarating, I think. So I think the many people that were on those calls all shared that sense of exploration and frankly the challenge of moving beyond some phenomena observations to try and point that in a line of sight towards a commercial application.
So one of the things that was really fascinating is that we had pretty much equal representation, not only from the academic side, but the commercial side, also from the government side, and then also from the implementation partners and people like the Axiom Space. But can you just share with, we got all these people together, these world experts. What were some of the key findings that came out of the symposium? I know that we had about 57 opportunities that we defined, but can you just talk about just the groupings of the key ones that came out of this?
Sure. There's a couple of common themes and groupings. One of them was the leveraging of microphysiological systems, so-called organs on a chip. And this, a lot of this data came from NIH sponsorship from NCATS of the organs on a chip in space. And the simple observation is you get disease-like characteristics in these organ systems under microgravity. Those can resolve with the reintroduction of gravity, and some of those development of these pathological characteristics may illuminate not only the pathways by which that pathology develops, but also may serve as very rapid models for looking into pharmaceutical blocking of these pathways. So I think microphysiological systems, in terms of pharma industry and their interest, is something where you can definitely make that argument that this would make sense for a commercial investment as a means to evaluate, let's say, osteoporosis or kidney disease. And there's lots of, there's data that's been generated in those systems in microgravity. Second one would be stem cells themselves, as well as their secretome, or the products that they secrete under certain conditions. So there's a lot of observations, including simulated microgravity, that indicate stem cell behavior is altered, that reproduction may be faster, maintenance of a more primitive phenotype, more pluripotent phenotype may be better supported in microgravity. And then the interesting question too is the secretome. How does that change? And what's going to come from that? And that really was an interesting one to think about. And in terms of the business model as well, because there are business models, there are companies, terrestrial companies that are focused on exposing stem cells to a given set of conditions and collecting that secretome as a product. Classic example is low partial pressure of oxygen. We know stem cells respond to low PO2. And I would just make the analogy, we know stem cells respond to microgravity. So how do they respond and how might that be captured in a unique way? The third area that we covered was more broad biofabrication, including everything from thin layer deposition, adsorption type processes where you get a more, what do I want to say, consistent deposition of a complex molecule like a protein, to 3D printing, where one can work with mechanically non-cross-linked or weaker gels and not have to worry about photo cross-linking or other chemistry to cross-link because of the lack of the gravity. And then the overarching theme that for me personally, I thought was really jumped right out was the absolute need for mechanizing, for making this robotic and to use non-destructive sensing and to basically to crank up the ability to do cell and tissue assessments in massively parallel fashion with artificial intelligence management. And frankly, to take the human hands out of the picture, to get the pipetting and stuff all robotically done. And what that will allow is allow the N to get the number of observations up that we can really build a stronger foundation on which to build future business models. So that I think is target number one, is mechanized systems for cell and tissue culture with non-destructive assessment, whether it be photo, ultrasound, whatever non-destructive technique, but being able to measure, assess, and control those systems in microgravity, and then to allow the massively parallel application to generate that data. And that, from a business perspective, is where I believe, a lot of intellectual property will lie.
Right. So the idea is, instead of sending one experiment up, you send one experiment up that you iterate over a 12-month period of time, maybe 50, 100 times, collect that data real time, make tweaks to the experiment. It's actually running up on station. Absolutely fascinating that became a common theme out of the symposium. Also, in the previous session, we had Alex McDonald and the team talking about, proving the business case. As part of the group of people that you brought in, some of your colleagues from the University of Pittsburgh, you really assembled, and together we assembled a group of business experts that really looked at, and they were asked to assess, this whole area of space-based biomanufacturing. If we had that, what's the commercial LEO economy look like? They performed market analysis. Can you talk a little bit about their findings?
Yeah, so we do this when we're talking about a new medical device or a new cell therapy, and you're working from a pretty firm foundation in terms of estimating. You have different models and current treatments that you can work with. So this was a lot more speculative. And I always say, the Yogi Berra quote, making predictions is difficult, particularly when they're about the future. So that's the case here. So what we did is looked at a number of different sources for the current markets and the market projections, for instance, with stem cell therapy, stem cell product therapy, microphysiological systems, what I want to say, 3D printing in the biospace. And for each one of those, looked and made our best guess in terms of what small fraction of that market might be reasonable in 5 years, 5 to 6 years. And these were small numbers, less than 1%. And then we took those numbers, and again, we looked at each one and speculated on a growth rate, and whether that growth rate would exceed or be what percentage of the speculated growth rate that's been done already here terrestrially by experts. So we really we really took at the core the current models for the various topics here terrestrially, and then built off them, assuming that their added value would be discovered and applied in LEO. And we ended up with numbers on the order, I think the highest was around 1.5 billion. We did a 10-year extrapolation from 2026 to 2035. So lots of estimation in there, but it gives you kind of a sense, relatively, you can kind of look at one versus another. And of course, all bets are off if some, the unknown pops in, the things we don't know that we don't know, that can change things. But it gives us at least some ballpark numbers to work with.
Right. So what was the key deliverable that came out of the symposium, and what's the next steps?
So our first deliverable, key deliverable, is a white paper. And we envision that we'll have multiple publications that come from this that really focus in on different areas. But this was kind of a general overview of the current status. A lot of the thoughts that we've covered here, going into the different topic areas, different research areas, what needs to be done, the market estimates, et cetera. So that is now available. It's on a preprint server, and I believe we're going to put the link up here for those who want to see it. That's out there. And now we're working on putting together a consortium. And this consortium, interested parties, government, academic, industrial, but really to kind of set the agenda and to work towards what I want to say, harnessing funding. Maybe this is NASA, maybe this is federal government, NIH, DoD, NSF, but to point to those entities and say, look, if you're interested in seeing this get catalyzed, this is an area to apply resources, because we think if you apply resources here, this will overcome these questions. This will open up this new information. So trying to make a map of the key gap areas that we think with appropriate bridge funding will really open things up in terms of moving towards commercialization in those areas. So as that consortium is coming together right now, we're then going to be developing that agenda and then having discussions with federal agencies and trying to get support that would be open for competition. And another point I would like to make is that, this is strategic too. As this low Earth orbit has opened up, the U.S. is not the only, obviously, player in the game here, and the intellectual property market is, at stake here as well. So I think we need to be thinking strategically in terms of where we see future potential intellectual property and how we get to that land, if you will, how we get to that region and make those key observations and get them protected.
Right. The idea is that if we don't do it and take leadership, somebody else is going to come forward, and there's already rumblings there. And so in order to maintain our leadership, not only in space, but in the medical arena, clearly what you're saying here is that we really need to have a coordinated strategic strategy to maximize the opportunity here. Well, yes. Dr. Wagner, unfortunately, we could talk for another couple of hours or a couple of days. I want to thank you. This has been literally the most exciting project I've ever worked on in my career, and I've worked on some really exciting ones, and it's a direct result of your leadership and the team you've assembled, and also my colleagues here at the lab. we're gonna wrap it up, and I'll turn it over to Christine. And Christine,
Gary,
it's all yours.
thanks so much. Thank you. This was wonderful. Dr. Wagner, always great to see you. Thanks for joining us today. It's fascinating what you've brought together with traditional space stakeholders and then new players to the microgravity research. So we're really looking forward to hearing about more as this develops. So thank you both. We really appreciate you joining us today. This brings us to the end of the first day of the 2021 ISSRDC conference, and it's been an amazing day. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. I found the conversations fascinating and all of the discussions about the technology were really engaging. Please be sure to join us tomorrow at 10 o'clock a.m. Eastern when we start our day in conversation with Dr. Ellen Stofan, Undersecretary of Science and Research at the Smithsonian, and Dr. Thomas Zurbuchen, Associate Administrator for NASA Science Mission Directorate, followed by panelists on advancement of tissue chip research in space, as well as the latest from the investment world and lots more. We want to thank again our platinum sponsor, Boeing, and to all of our silver sponsors and exhibitors. Please don't forget to stop by their virtual booths over the next 3 days, and you could be a winner of the ISS Above device and the Oculus headset with access to the ISS Experience episodes 1 and 2. Again, that's courtesy of our good friends at Felix and Paul Studios. Finally, a quick reminder that our virtual technical sessions with live Q&A will run Monday, August 16th through Wednesday, August 18th. There are going to be over 60 presentations and posters, and there are a variety of subject areas. So there's something for everybody there. A big thank you to our partners from the American Astronautical Society for doing the heavy lifting on putting the technical sessions together. You can register to attend the technical sessions at the American Astronautical Society website or at www.issconference.org. If you need that information, again, I'm going to say it one more time, www.issconference.org to register. Have a great afternoon, and thank you for joining us.